Welcome to the Michigan Golfer Show with your host, Bill Shelton. Join us each week as we explore the people, the places, and the events that shape our great game.
Walter Hagen was born in Brighton, New York, but much of his life he spent in the state of Michigan. In addition to the Detroit area, Walter, where you played golf as head pro at Oakland Hills Country Club and some of the other places you frequented here, you liked other parts of the state, particularly the northern part of the state of Michigan and Cadillac. Wasn't that a great time in your life?
Absolutely. It was after I'd basically retired professionally from golf, and Cadillac was a wonderful place to start off on my second career, if you would.
Well, Walter was here when my parents bought the place. That was about 1950. And he was up here every summer from about 1950 to about 1956 working on his book. The first couple of years, though, I don't think he did much on his book. I think he just enjoyed the scenery here and enjoyed his friends coming up and just enjoyed himself right here. Later on, he had to get working on his book, and there was, I don't know who it was, but I do know there was a girl that came up here and got him to really start writing. Now, one of the things that Walter liked to do a lot was to party. And he would often be up all night with his friends that would come up from either Detroit or come in from other place. And he'd be, they'd eventually leave, and my dad would be getting up in the morning, and my dad would usually have coffee together, and Walter would go to bed. My dad would start his day. Walter also was a gentleman. My dad told me that around women or children, he never heard Walter tell a dirty joke or swear or anything else like that. I mean, Walter respected other people. He was a real gentleman. Another thing Walter liked to do a lot was hunt. Often when we had to go wait for the school, we would be able to go duck hunting before the school bus came, and we'd have a duck blind out here, and Walter would be down there with us trying to shoot ducks. Well, one other thing that Walter would often do when his friends were here, and they'd get right out here on the front lawn and they'd drive golf balls into the lake. The other fellows were kind of always a little bit intimidated because the road used to go through and there'd be traffic. And there's no way could they match Walter when Walter teed with ball up and knocked it out there. That ball just took off nice and low and just rose and just kept on going. It was just a beautiful sight to see. I guess all they could do was party. He did have a nice boat that he brought up here. The neighbors set up a beautiful dock for him, and he had that big Chris craft. It was about a 20-footer, I think. He had the biggest boat on the lake. It was nice. Put up a wave about that high when he took it out there. When any lady that came along visited, he would always take them out for a boat ride. That was kind of special.
Up until about 10 years ago, every spring and in parts of the summer, we get a lot of mail for Walter Hagen. In the very first 3 or 4 years, every time there'd be a major storm, golf balls would wash up on the beach, and we could never figure out where they were coming from, what was happening. Every time you thought you had them all, another storm would come through, more golf balls would appear. We used to, when we'd rake the beach, golf balls, again. It was like they were growing there, and I mean numbers of golf balls.
Wild Bluff at Bay Mills, voted best golf course in the UP. Golf and gaming packages available from $89.
Well, I grew up here in Cadillac, and as a small child, I can remember driving by Pilgrim's Village here, and my dad saying, "Walter Hagen stays there." And I still remember that. It's part of the fabric of our community that he was here for those many summers. And it was interesting, when we started the project of the Hague, I kind of put out the word in the community on stories, and he really was a large part of the community. He interacted with lots of different people. I had lots of different people call and say that he went to their houses. One family was telling me they were connected with Walter Hagen not through golf, but through Brittany Spaniels, which must have been his hunting dogs. And that Doris, the secretary, who we have talked about a lot here in this production, is buried out in their family plot out in the Leroy Tustin area. So that was very, very interesting. We've talked a little bit about the story of the Hague shooting the golf balls across what must have been M115, but another part of the story is the local kids would hang out, the boys. And after he shot all those golf balls out into the lake, the kids would go out and gather up as many golf balls as they could and bring them in, and he'd take them out for ice cream. So Walter Hagen and Cadillac are pretty synonymous back from those early days. It's a great part of our history and our heritage. And just like we had a boxer, Ed Wolgast here, when you talk about old athletic celebrities, you always have this Walter Hagen and Ed Wolgast as part of the story. So this Pilgrim Village was just as it is today. It is right back then, and it was just great memories for all of us. So when we started asking about stories from the Hague, one of our friends brought these golf clubs that are Walter Hagen clubs, and they're very classic. They're classic old golf clubs, and he brought in a tee and some golf balls, and that was just one of the artifacts that we have. A few years ago, we did Ruby Tuesdays in Cadillac athletic history, and we got a picture out at Ruby Tuesdays of Walter Hagen in his boat, in his Chris-Craft, with several of the local bathing beauties of the time. So if you're stopping in Cadillac, go out to Ruby Tuesdays and take a peek at the picture of Walter Hagen in his Chris-Craft.
Well, by the end of the 30s, it was pretty much the end of my professional competitive career. I still played now and then, but something was different. For all intents and purposes, I had lost my drive. So, I packed it all in and moved to Cadillac, Michigan. Why, you ask, Cadillac? Because I think it's one of the most beautiful places in the earth. And it was also close enough to Detroit that I could still visit it, but far enough away that if people wanted to visit me, they had to be sure they wanted to come visit me. And while I was here, I had a heck of a time.